Hello and welcome to this quick tutorial for Industrial Engineering version X.2.4 on the power capabilities of this mod. Now there's two sections to this. You have fluid power and coal coking. So if you want to look in the description, you can skip to the part you want. So we'll start off with oil power. So oil power, instead of making solid fuel, you can make power directly from either an oil turbine or an oil boiler. Now, an oil boiler works the exact same as a vanilla one, except it just uses the fuel directly as a fuel source. So the same ratio of one boiler to two engines applies here as before, and you put water in the sides, oil comes in the bottom, steam out the top. Now the oil turbine is a bit special. It can do the equivalent of 4 steam engines, because it can do 3.6 megawatts instead of 900 kilowatts, and it also just takes in oil directly. So you chuck oil in and you get it directly out. So what oils can you use? Now all of the oils in the base game, so crude oil, heavy oil, light oil and petroleum can be used. You can't use sulfuric acid or lubricant, sadly. However, all of them are supported. However, there are some extra oils in this mod that can help you out. For one, if you do the electrolytic separation recipe for to get oxygen for oil processing, you also get hydrogen, which can also be chucked into an oil turbine or boiler to get you some power. So we'll see that here in a second. We want water and get us a fluid void just to delete that extra thing. As we see, in a moment we process it and it creates us some power. However, hydrogen is highly nerfed, since electrolytic separation is usually a very high power consumption recipe, but I wanted to use the chemical plant for simplicity in Factorio. It only creates a tiny amount of power for how much you actually use. So it's not even as much as this chemical plant, but it is something you need to dispose of, and it is a power source you could in theory use if you want to stockpile hydrogen and then just chuck it in a lot of turbines. However, there are better ways of doing this. So obviously from your refinery, we all know you get the 3 basic oils. However, we've added also in new oils. So we have synthetic gas. So we have pure and dirty. So dirty is what you start off with. You put in 40 petroleum and some steam through the steam reforming process, and that will get you, for 40 petroleum, it will get you 30 syngas. So if we see that here, we can give it some steam and we can give it some petroleum. We'll see it starts to process through and it will make us 30 dirty syngas, or synthetic gas. Now what we can do to increase the purity of our syngas to create more power is we can use the pure recipe, which will take some dirty syngas and just a little bit of water and give us a lot more synthetic gas for our money. So as you see, then it goes in 30 of this, gives you 40. Now this is all loosely based on real life. Steam reforming is a real thing, and adding in water to the byproduct of this after does give you more. So it is essentially like a one-to-one thing type thing. Obviously I haven't used the byproduct just for simplicity in the mod, but apart from that it is the same basic idea. So then what we can do finally after that is we can get a tank and store it. And then what we can do is finally get, let's say, oil turbines. We can just stack them along because they do share all the fluid, and chuck it in, and this will start creating some power. Now with syngas there is limits, so while these can use 40 a second, they do not, since it depends on the power source how much fluid it needs, because it is maxed out at 3.6. So you'll see here this is maxed out by the power. It can't do more than 3.6. It cannot go above the consumption limit of the machine, of what it's saying. So it is actually just using what it says of, you know, a couple of a second. However, this is the opposite. It's using as much oil as it can, but it physically can't create more power from the oil due to how the way the turbines and oils are limited. Now with syngas you can also boil it, so we can put it into the right part of the boiler, and then if we get some water, that goes that, and then we can get some steam engines, which will then create us power. That way it is less efficient than the turbine way, but turbines are more expensive, and boilers do have a direct upgrade path. As you see, it's just a tank and some pipes. So if you're running out of coal, or you just can't produce enough coal from your mines, you could easily stick in some petroleum, light oil, heavy oil, crude oil, or go through the syngas conversion to power your base. Now, all of this isn't really gated that much. Oil boiling is pretty much straight after oil processing, and then oil turbines is just after that with blue sites as well. And to create syngas, just advanced oil processing, so it's not too hard to get. You can get it definitely, you can get the oil boiling upgrade pretty much as soon as you get oil processing, which is quite early on, and turbines are mid-game. So this is an alternative to solar power and nuclear power early on, where you only go for one to four reactors to power your base, just because you don't want to do solar, or coal and solid fuel isn't enough. So this is meant to be an alternative. Now, there is a second aspect to power generation, which is far earlier along in the game. Now, this recipe is done for a steel furnace. Now, as you see, there is a pipe added to it, so it can take in fluid. So, how does this work? In fact, it's output fluid. So what you can do is you can take coal, which I don't have any of, which was a great idea by me, to say the least. So what you can do is get coal, you put it in, some in fuel, some here, and as you see, you'll start processing. Now what this does is it will, after about 10 seconds, because it's grinding speed of 2, it will produce coal coke, and also a little one bit of creosote, or creosote oil. Now, if you know what this is, coal coke is basically improve over coal. So for some power, you go from 4 megawatts to 6 megawatts of energy. So it's not doubly as efficient, but it's, you know, it's worth it. You get 50% more energy for basically just going through a slow process. So you do need space to do this, however, it is more efficient. Now, what do we do with creosote oil? Wow. There's a few things. Well, you can just store it in bulk to get rid of it. You could, in theory, if you wanted to, you could put it in a turbine, as we can see here, if we put in creosote, and then get a passive void. As you can see, it will create 3.6 megawatts from creosote oil. It is quite a good, it's not a very good power source because you make a little of it. However, if you have lots of furnace, you can create a good portion of your base's power off this, or in fact probably your whole base if you do enough of it, or you use efficiency upgrades in your machines. So you can use it for power, or you can use it for its second purpose, which is quite useful when going into production sites, which is to create treated wood. So what you can do is take your creosote oil, and you can get a bit of wood, which again I do not have. And you can take the wood, chuck it in, and as you see, 1 creosote and 1 wood makes 1 treated wood. So what do we use treated wood for? Well, if we go along to our next machine, which we'll have here, we can use it for an alternative recipe for rails. So instead of 1 stone, 1 steel, and 1 iron stick for 2 rails, we can create 4 rails from 1 stone, 1 steel, and 1 treated wood, which is much more accurate in real life, since at least older rails use wood, and the rails in game, if we look at the icon, clearly they have wood in there. So this is more realistic, and it is a more cheaper way of doing things. So if you're doing production sites and you have limited amounts of iron, this could be a good way to decrease a lot, since obviously you're going to be using quite a bit of iron for that steel. You know, 5 iron for 2 rails, or 5 iron for 4 rails. You know, it's an obvious win. And then also the stone can be essentially gathered for free from your ore processing in the mod, since obviously your crusher and washer produce stone, so it can then make it pretty cheap in terms of power and using byproducts to then, you know, reduce costs for production sites. And that's basically the whole coal coking process. To unlock it, there is research. You need to have fluid handling, if I could find that. Yeah, fluid handling. Right after that, you unlock coal coking. This is just because you need to obviously have researched, you know, tanks and pipes really to make use of this, because otherwise you're not going to have anywhere to store creosote oil, because you haven't got the oil boiler yet. However, this will get you the coal coke treated wood, and then once you research the railway, you will unlock the 4 rail recipe. Anyway, that is the coal coking and oil power generation abilities of industrial engineering. Thank you for watching.